Hey everyone, welcome to the Jackie Senatori Show. Today, I am thrilled to introduce to you Jennifer Mann, a mind-body practitioner and expert in psychophysiological disorders. I got that word. Co-founder of Somia and the Heal program. Jen's journey from being bedridden with multiple chronic illnesses to becoming a renowned clinical and thought leader is nothing short of inspiring. Her innovative methods have helped thousands of people recover from stress, trauma, and chronic illness. Jen joins us today to share her incredible story and insights on how to regulate your nervous system. Welcome to the show, Jen.
Jackie, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that we're here to have this conversation. I think it's much needed for the world.
It is, one of the biggest things that I hope people get from today is many things because people can be tuning in if they have anxiety, if they have a chronic illness, if they just want to learn that their body is giving them feedback and you are so great at teaching them how to heal it. I'm watching your Instagram videos and the swaying part, and just watching you sway already makes me feel more calm. So everyone's
Mhm.
in good hands to learn today because we all have a nervous system.
I love that. And I've used that line before. We all have a nervous system. That's right.
So you really can help everybody listening, whether they have a disorder, whether somebody they love is going through something. So I'd love
Yeah.
for people to get to know you a little bit and what your journey has been like. And I know it's a big one. What has it been like for you to get to this point where you studied the nervous system, where you learned these tools and practices to now teach other people?
Wow. That is a big question, but I'm going to condense it for you. I'm going to probably chunk it because I think that the backstory, as you know, before the chronic illness and then the after story, I think everything is so important to give people insights and like the bigger understanding of what's happening in the body. So from a young age, I already was experiencing anxiety, panic attacks. I had a stutter, and that was from mom and dad and traumas and abandonment and a lot of attachment wounds already happening from a young age. So I had a very strong foundation to doubt myself, to feel unsafe in the world, to feel unworthy, and to deploy patterns like people pleasing, perfectionism, high achieving, pushing, ignoring the needs of my body at all costs, to avoid feeling hurt, abandoned, unworthy, and so on. So I then became a professional ballet dancer, which is another important part of my story or anyone's story because I I was a pro athlete as a ballet dancer, and ballet is athlete and artist. And there was this pushing and pushing and pushing. And maybe other people can relate if they haven't been a pro athlete at school. Maybe you really wanted to get good grades, or the school environment or even a work environment is quite competitive. And so that competition, that drive for perfection was like piled on top of the already patterns that I was moving through life with. And I started to experience a lot of injuries as a ballet dancer. And at the time, I didn't quite make the connection that I'm making now. But at the time, I was like, I wonder if my anxiety has anything to do with the pain that I get every day in my hip joints. I wonder if it's not just the dancing, because everyone around me doesn't have hip pain in their hip joints, and we're all dancing 12 hours a day. So I always had these recurring questions, but I was interested in more of the biodynamics, like the physiotherapy of it, the anatomy, the physiology. But I always was like, I'm sure that my anxiety plays a key part in this puzzle. So I kept dancing and injuries, recovery, and then I had one big injury to my right ankle. So that was you know, again, a wonderful opportunity for me to dive deeper into healing myself. And I was sort of redirected instantly. I had the pull to help people move better, feel better. So I studied Pilates, yoga, Feldenkrais, massage, all the things. I wanted my hands to speak to other people's bodies, and I wanted my um, the way that I would coach them to move to help their minds feel better, to improve their life. But Jackie, there was always something missing. So wherever I worked, everyone loved to give me the quote unquote hard patients because I was so fascinated by why does Bill always have pain? Like he's been to physios and chiropractors and osteo doctors and da 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 da. And I was like, but I was still coming at it from a very body movement. But I had this pull still. Something is not quite there. Something is missing. So I was still going in the realm of like, but how was your day at work, Bill? Like, tell
Yeah.
me, how's your life? But still not quite knowing exactly. But I had this intuition of like, I'm sure this has to do with Bill's pain. So I decided to go back to school and to study biomedical sciences and physio. And when I went back to school, my ballet patterns of competition and comparing myself and perfectionism, they just got so loud. So
Mhm.
as you can hear with this story, there are layers. If I look back, I think I had my childhood was amazing. It was idyllic. I grew up in Africa. I was a professional ballet dancer. I traveled the world. What could go wrong in my life? It was perfect.
Right.
And then when I look at all the pieces, I'm like, oh yeah. That makes sense. It doesn't make it not perfect, but it makes it what it is to make it so that I was hypervigilant and anxious and stressed all the time. So to fast forward a little bit, I was in school, loving what I was doing, but just this is when I started to really experience more pain, fatigue, fevers than I had before. So when I was 18, I had the Epstein-Barr virus and I got it,
Yes.
which is mono, right?
Right.
Mononucleosis. And some people have it and they don't even know. In fact, most teenagers get it, but we also all know a teenager, a classmate who had it and they had that, like they had it really bad and they had to stay home for a few months. So I was down for 6 months. So that was like
Wow.
a big sign already for a young, super fit and healthy, trained, very healthy nutrition to be sick for so long from something like mono. So that was a big sort of sign to me at the time, even if I didn't know anything. Another sign, the injuries and like, why am I like, she got mono? Why isn't
It's
she down
okay.
like me? Yeah. So when I went back to school, I was just feeling all these patterns coming back. And then all of a sudden, all my systems started to speak a little bit louder, right? So instead of just injuries when I was like dancing or performing, now it was more obvious. I would just wake up and be, in pain and have pain in my shoulder blades or my hip joints. And I started to have these recurring fevers. And these fevers were unexplained when you
Mhm.
go to the GP.
Mhm.
And I mean, the things the doctors told me, once this doctor was like, I think you have a UTI. And I was like, I don't think I have a UTI. We did all the tests, and even when they came back negative, he was like, it's a false negative. You have a UTI. And I was like, I don't have a UTI. I promise it's something else.
You can
So,
feel
but
it. You can feel when your body, I'm laughing at this fever part, Jen, because when I had Lyme disease, I got it in fevers. And people are like, oh, you have postpartum. I'm like, my son is 8 months old and it's been wonderful. How did I just get postpartum like in June? Like, why today? One
I
of them
have
even,
goosebumps.
yeah, one of them even said, like, oh, you maybe just be missing your husband. You should go out for dinner with him. I'm like, missing my husband causes a fever. And then, of course, anxiety causes fevers. I was like, I've had anxiety on and off all of my life. Why would anxiety give me 104 fever on half the day and then go away and then come back? Anyway, for everyone listening, it's look at the wisdom of your body and really trust it. It's your soul's knowing, and it takes a brave person to say, no, it's not a UTI. I'm going to keep listening to myself. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I got goosebumps because, um, the fever thing was a big trigger for me even after I recovered because it was one of the big things that like really knocked me out. And it's interesting, I haven't really talked about it with someone yet like this, especially
Mhm.
the fevers, like someone else to have that experience. So when you were sharing it, I was like, yes, me too.
Yes.
Yeah. So, to again bring the story to where we want it to be, I went from this whole experience of stress, increasing messages coming from my body, and they started to come also in form of headaches, and I would get whiplash, and I was like, wow, my body's really like, I'm tired, and something's not quite right, not just tired, something else is. And ironically, at physio school, I was seeing patients with fibromyalgia, and our protocol as a physio was to give them like shoulder exercises and band exercises. And I was like, this isn't right. There's this person. So again, it was like I hadn't received the information, but I knew in my heart for many years now that something was missing. It had to do with the brain. And yeah, and this had to, I see it through the lens of my illness, and my recovery is other people's roadmap to healing. But when I went from coping to bedbound, that happened for me overnight. So all of a sudden, one day, I had really bad back pain. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to rest this time. So I decided to sit in bed it was the weekend for 2 days. And on Monday is when everything began. Literally, I remember because I had clients, and it was ironically weekend. I can rest for 2 days. And then, yeah. And then within a few weeks, I was experiencing 30 plus symptoms. From my face was covered in acne from my skin to all the way. Really, yeah.
Yes, it's wild when you're talking of. I really want to share something that I can see from this outside viewpoint is how much your soul was coming in to create what looks like trauma and illness, and all these things are horrible. And it's really hard for people. I mean, now you're living the gift of it and you get to share it with the world. But listening to it and having gone through something so super similar, it's hard and it's dark. And when I get to witness you sharing it, it's just your soul's calling. I know I'm meant to help Bill and people. And it's like, I want to know what that answer is. And we're asking that powerful, whether we know it consciously or not. And life's like, okay, the best way I can show it to you is to put you in bed on Monday and have you learn all these wonderful things. So I thank you for going through that, because now you can share it. And I'm sorry that of the pain that it takes sometimes to get to the gift, because it's hard.
It is. And I agree with you. And I sense that maybe that was your experience too, from the place that you're sharing it. But yeah, as you know, that dark place, I don't know how it was for your sort of, like when you get the diagnoses. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, POTS, long COVID, fibromyalgia patterns, fatigue patterns. And there was just this ongoing, like, let's just add on another one because we're not sure. And maybe like my actually COVID tests were all negative, but they were like, this is definitely long COVID. Like she has long COVID. And I was like, again, I appreciate the efforts and everything, but it's just, there was some important missing puzzle pieces. So, yeah, none of the conventional paths helped at all, sadly. Like none of them. I also didn't find many doctors who were knowledgeable in the subject. And if they were chronic pain or chronic fatigue specialists, they were more on the rehab kind of aspect of it, meaning the very physical aspect, like exercises. So that's where I was put, like exercise, but I couldn't get out of bed. So when I had to exercise, I was like, are you sure I need to be doing these things today? And they're like, yeah, just take it slow. But even the act of getting out of bed, I mean, I would be out for 2 weeks after just trying to walk to the bathroom by myself. So it was very dark, as you said. Yeah, very hard to not getting the answers, and also have doctors tell you it's a poor prognosis. You might never recover because of how severe your symptoms are. And yeah.
I want to acknowledge that in that moment of what you shared, like not getting out to go to the bathroom, and really just to connect with people who have been this low and felt that, and how you had, I think it was your boyfriend at the time,
Yes.
help you. And that was somebody who became your caregiver. And just to kind of give that praise to caregivers to be able to, and for you to be able to allow yourself to just lay in bed for 2 weeks and go through those dark days. Now I'm sure you get to look back too, of seeing how that has contributed to everything that was to come in, all the answers to come in. Because if the medical profession gave you the solution, you wouldn't be here today doing what you're doing. It would have been, here, take this pill. Now it's gone. but everything needed to fail to open up this door that you're now teaching people. And
Yeah,
gosh,
100%.
I often joke, Jen, sometimes I'm like, God, universe, you could have wrote it on a post-it note. Like I would have studied it. We didn't need to put me in bed and not be able to walk to the bathroom. And yeah, but
Oh,
it takes that to know to be that out. So praise for your partner for being able to do that. My mom came and moved in with me. I had a 7-month-old baby and a
wow.
3-year-old, and she'd
Wow.
be carrying me to the bathroom or I couldn't walk on my feet. And
Wow.
just those moments of receiving love is very powerful. To have received such love, I think is part of it too, that someone really was there for you. I think is part of the journey of learning helpless and
Yeah,
learning surrender, as
100%.
perfectionists don't like to do. So we checked
Yeah,
that box.
100%. And I'm curious to hear like your recovery. I know a little bit about it, but I'm curious, as
Yeah.
you say, perfectionist. I had a conversation a few weeks ago about how that is actually whether, in some parts of your life, the perfectionism causes a lot of stress and a lot of coping patterns. It actually was a gift in my recovery because there's a balance of adaptive perfectionism and an adaptive sense of um, motivation and keep
Yes.
going. And
Yeah.
because it's really to change your brain to heal yourself, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of openness, a lot of radical self-responsibility. Like, wow, these are my thoughts right now. Wow, these are my feelings right now. These are my actions, and this is the result in my body. I need to change all of it to heal myself. And if you look at it like that, it's like a huge mountain. But when you have some building blocks of perfectionist high achiever, you're
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with the big mountain and how to get to the top. How do you resonate with that?
I do. I think there was a quote I'm probably going to butcher right now, that we're not given something that we can't handle. And sometimes people will hear, I too heard the doctors told me that you're in uncharted waters and we just don't know what to do.
Mm,
Lyme disease is a lifelong illness. And I think when you hear that, for me and for you, we went to, well, everything. I was lucky enough to be a mindset coach and to have come from already an energetic background, and
mm,
everything is healable, everything is achievable. So that
love
speaks
that.
to that perfectionism. And it was really just, I'm not going to just take that this is it for me. At
Yeah.
moments I did, I'm sure as you did too, that I would cry and say, okay, then let me die. I don't want to live chronically ill for the
Mm,
rest of my life. What's the answer?
mm,
I think Lyme disease comes in from everybody that I've talked to, and I was in hundreds of IV rooms for years, and it
mm,
transforms your life. Chronic illness, I think, and to the degree of which we get it, comes in
mm,
like a freight train to transform our lives. It's just whether we say, how can I learn from this? How can I help myself? Or some people could say, well, I'm going to identify with this and this is it for me. And I'm going to be like this forever. And they take that seat. Both
mm,
are okay. It's just for us, we
mhm,
looked at the mountain and just said, no, I'm going to figure it out. I'm
mhm,
not done here. I'm going to figure this out. And I think I don't want to say reward, but our gift given from it is now getting to help so many other people have hope. And then no matter where they're listening to this right now or what part of their life, whether it's their health, relationship, whatever it is, you can find the answer. Your answer was different than my answer, but we all have
yeah.
an answer. So it's wonderful to see and to relate to how dark that was and now see where you're at right now, just to not that long after
Yeah.
of what's possible.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for people to know, that message of healing and the capacity that we have for healing. And when even just our perception of it changes, if we come across something inspiring that helps us change our perception, or if we meet someone who gives us that hope, or we land on a practitioner or someone who helps us understand, like, you think your healing capacity is this, but actually it truly is limitless because um, what and here maybe I don't know how much you want to go
Sure.
into how I recovered, but I learned at the beginning with brain retraining to, you know, essentially what was happening is I was changing the state of my body through interrupting thought patterns, recognizing emotions, and then creating visualizations and postural movements to change my brain, to change the state of my nervous system. The state of your physiology is always reflecting the state of your nervous system. So if your nervous system is dysregulated, is overtaxed, if you're and I think some people sometimes say, but it's not all about the nervous system. And I'm like, you're right. But how do you think the immune system communicates and gets the message of the stress? How do you think hormones get released? It starts in the brain. How do you think we start digestion? It starts with also the brain with the peristalsis movement. Like there's I like to call the nervous system in all of its parts the orchestra director, right? Because even our musculoskeletal system moves. We have joints and muscles and tendons, but who do you think moves those muscles? It's
Right.
our brain, our nervous system. So when our nervous system is constantly moving us through life, and its main goal is safety, survival, safety. And when it senses, because of layers of chronic stress, trauma, physiological stress, like getting many viruses or having, let's say, a buildup of toxins in your body because of the stress that's already inside your body, so your lymphatic system's unable to get rid of that, etc., so on and so forth, your nervous system is overtaxed and it literally changes the way in which it functions. And our body goes into this allostasis zone. And allostasis is a new normal where now our cells in our body are not producing the mitochondria, the energy making machines in our cells are not releasing the energy because they're not getting the signal of we need energy. So our body is in energy conservation mode. And these messages are directed from the brain, from the nervous system, in communication with everything else. So, although, yes, there might be symptoms and patterns in different systems of the body, like cardiovascular, your hormonal, your endocrine, your immune, it truly is the state of your physiology that is creating that imbalance, and that is coming from the state of your nervous system. So that sort of approach is at the center of how I healed and what I teach. And so going back to the moments, because I wanted to say something so
Yeah.
specific that was really powerful, is when I was learning to change the messages in my physiology, which by the way is not magic or woo-woo, it's like when you get scared, let's say something instantly, I don't know, let's say all of a sudden you have to speak in front of 5,000 people unexpectedly, and maybe you've never done that. And so your body is like, oh my
Start
gosh.
shaking. Yeah.
Yeah. How quickly does that all happen? Within 2 seconds of hearing, you have to speak in front of 5,000 people. So the same thing is happening in our body when we change our physiology from threat to safety. It doesn't
Mm,
take a lot to switch symptoms off. And for me,
it's
that was
beautiful.
a huge aha moment because I was like, wait, you're telling me that a fever can go away? And like, what's medicine doing? How does medicine lower a fever? It's interacting with certain processes in our physiology. But really, on a biological standpoint, our physiology is directed by our own self. And if we
Yeah.
can change the processes through our nervous system, which is the orchestra director, you can really change the outcome. And the thing that I wanted to say, but I had to say all this context before, was that I learned to, going back to fevers, switch off my fever in under 5 minutes. So my temperature dysregulation would go up. I would know that there was a trigger that I had missed, especially at the beginning of my brain retraining journey, maybe an emotional one, maybe I had been standing for a little bit longer than usual. So my brain was like, wait, this is too much energy. Ding, 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 ding,
Mhm.
alarm. This is not good. So I would start to experience that heat rising, that temperature dysregulation, which resulted in a fever. And then within a few minutes of this process that I was learning, which I then added stuff because I was like, oh, but I'm still getting triggered. So I need to add some body-based stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't resolved the root of it. So here's some somatic experiencing stuff. So like it became this
Love child, I like to call it. You married them all together. Yes.
I love it. There's the pool and the lanes, and I was finding the water in the pool.
Mhm. The
Um,
orchestrator.
The orchestrator. Yeah. So yeah, just I hope anyone who's listening that empowers you, especially that example of like how quickly symptoms can come on. That is a shift in our physiology that we ourselves can create. And because our brain is this fantastic organ, right? And it has such a high level task in our body. It needs to do so much. And so because it needs to do so much, it only has a certain amount of energy to use. So it makes things work more efficiently by memorizing certain patterns, by using ones that are familiar instead of new ones, by checking into lived past experiences to predict the future. And when we have a certain lived past experience that holds emotional unresolved experiences, trauma, something in the body that is overwhelming, when we recognize a pattern in the present that recalls that, our nervous system thinks that we're still 7 or 15 or 5 or 4 until we tell it otherwise. So I say the brain is super amazing and intelligent, but it needs the body, and together the body and the brain and this understanding of how they work together, you can really create some long lasting change. Yeah.
So beautiful. And it's so great to give people hope that something can stop, something can turn off just as quickly as it started. I would love to ask you, and I'm sure everyone's curious as to what brain retraining is specifically or how they can do
Yes.
it. I would love the example in what you would
Mhm.
share about anxiety or a panic attack,
Yeah.
because a lot of the things I think sometimes it comes from that unconscious 7-year-old that someone's like, I don't know in this moment when I'm standing at a grocery store, when I'm in a meeting or nothing seems really wrong. There's no threat right now. Why is there anxiety? Why is there panic?
Mhm.
Can we heal it with brain retraining or the steps that you teach, even if we don't know what the brain is latching onto at 7 years old?
Yeah, very, very powerful question. So, um, my first foot into this work was a light version of brain retraining. But what helped me was something called the lightning process. Lightning process is a method developed by Dr. Phil Parker, and it's neurolinguistic programming and his own magic in it. And it's fantastic and it's amazing and it helps so many people. Um, I, in particular, for my journey in life, I had, as I was sharing earlier in the chunks of my life, I had trauma in childhood. I had attachment injuries with both my mom and my dad. I moved so much. I then had the ballet stuff on top of that, with this unresolved stutter, anxiety, going into, so there was just so much that was unresolved, and I just kept moving forward by inertia. But I had all of these feelings of, I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, this is too much, this is overwhelming, I don't know how to cope, I can't cope, I need to be perfect. So that whole, like, what set me up for that are those puzzle pieces. So if you don't have to remember, oh, on that day when I was 5.5, but the best way to create long-lasting change is to go through the body, not necessarily the mind, go through the body in the origin of that feeling. And the best way to do this, even without any knowledge at all, if you're experiencing anxiety in this moment, a good question to ask yourself is, when else have I felt this feeling without calling it anxiety when I was a young person? Like, when is maybe the first few times I felt this? And the simplicity of it is just you seeing yourself as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the body will remember that feeling. And it's so important to recognize that it's anxiety is this, it's a protection.
Mhm.
Imagine, like, it's like your nervous system is on high alert and has extra surveillance. And it
Yes.
has extra surveillance because it has experience of something overwhelming not working. It's like, if I am just me in this situation, it's too much. It's not going to work out. I can't survive this. But with anxiety, you have a perceived sense of safety because you have
Yes.
this feeling of hypervigilance. And it's like, I keep thinking of the example of, like, if you're in your house and you get robbed, if you were just sitting in your chair and you're like, oh, hi, okay, just, whatever, you can take everything. And
Right.
then that's that. But that's not what your body wants to do, is alert you. So if you've had that experience, a threatening experience that, by the way, can also just be a parent that was anxious when you were young,
Right.
and you having an emotion, and that parent responding in a way that did not mirror a sense of safety, but mirrored a sense of, oh, I need to be this too, because this is what I'm being taught right now. Because
Yeah.
when we're children, our nervous systems are learning, they're sponges, and they're like, what's mom doing, what's dad, what's my primary caregiver doing? Like, we're not aware of that, but that's what's happening. We're learning to regulate ourselves through how our parents regulate themselves. So if a parent was shut down, and this is going down intergenerational
Yep.
trauma, and I know I skipped the whole brain retraining, and I'm going to get there, but
Yep.
this is super important because
So good.
it's the heart of, everything at the end of the day. When you get to understand that these patterns are coming from even little things like that, everything makes more sense. And it's interesting. The mind can, as you said, right, you're a mindset coach.
Mhm.
You were a mindset. Yeah. Sometimes, especially nowadays, when it's like somatic, nervous system, the
So good.
mind doesn't do anything. I'm like, no, no, no. The mind is super important. Like, let's not forget that.
Yes. Marrying the
Um,
two. There's an energetic
yes.
component, I think, and there's a mind component. Because if we
Totally.
keep healing the energetic and the somatic, but we keep telling ourselves the same thought that I'm stupid or I'm whatever, the body's going to still have. So we have to find that. I think of it as like
Yes.
almost like a boat, like that teeter totter. You got to find that middle point of using them both.
Yeah.
Something so great about anxiety for everyone's, yes, my parents, and I have kids, and you have a son as well. And
Mm.
it's no shame in blaming the parents. I think anxiety has many gifts. Some of the most brilliant people that I have met, some of the most intelligent people, all had anxious backgrounds. That the gift in it was they became seekers and they became really
Mhm.
curious how to heal themselves. And without anxiety or without that traumatic experience as a child, we wouldn't have been shaped to be explorers, to be healers. So it's not wrong. It's just now we get to have these wonderful tools as you're
Mm.
sharing to be able to go back and say, okay, now it's safe. So
Yeah.
now we can relax. No one's going to rob you.
Yeah.
And if you want to have hypervigilance, sometimes you can. You can choose that
Yeah.
pencil, but can we choose
Totally.
the can we choose the crayon that says it's okay, like you're safe in this
Mhm.
situation, speaking, restaurants, whatever it is. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I love how you have a superpower, Jackie, and you take things and then you make them into good. And that's really powerful. I love that.
Yeah, to see the benefit of it. It's I live it and breathe it and teach it
I
and
love it.
I'm of it because sometimes I think we think these things are bad. And when I look at what you went through, as dark as it could be, and I feel it even with it, it's just like, gosh, I wish we could just put that on a post-it note, not have gone through that. I know that everything that you're sharing, when I look at your Instagram, when I feel into what your gift is now for the world, it's because of that. And
Yeah.
so, as much as it sucks to say, would I have taken that away if I could have? Probably, maybe I would have liked to
Mm.
redo it in some aspects or in some
Mhm.
moments. But ultimately, the soul knows, our soul knows, like that was meant for me to go through. And there's as many beautiful gifts that came out of it as things. And so,
Yeah.
I am super excited to know what you do
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
shut off that, not shut it off,
Mhm.
but to
Mhm.
choose in seconds. What
Yeah.
can you do when you're triggered,
Mhm.
or when someone's listening and you said go back to that first feeling and they're like, oh my gosh, my dad was an alcoholic, or my
Mhm.
something, they'll give you the example, and I
Mhm.
remember I had to be that way. And
Yeah.
what do they do now to tell their body?
Yeah. So going back from the
Yeah.
beginning of this process, when you practice this type of work, the top-down work first, meaning interrupting your thought patterns, discharging the energy in your body, using a bit of visualization, and embodying the new feelings that you're creating repeatedly, repeatedly, repeatedly. I'm talking like 100 times a day. The good news is that through repetition, your brain chemistry actually reorganizes itself. So I don't do brain retraining anymore. I wake up and I'm healthy. When I have an emotional trigger, I don't get a fever anymore. So my physiology, my brain has changed. Sometimes when I'm under stress, and sleep deprived because my boy is still under 2 years old and we
Hmm.
bed share and co-sleep and I still breastfeed and I'm tired and we wrote a book and we run a business and we travel. So sometimes there's, just
My nervous
and
system says that's it, no more.
my glass is a little too
Yeah.
full. So what I get is a message in my body that reminds me like this is too much. And for me, it comes in a form of just a sense of trapped energy, like I'm going into tired and wired.
Mm.
Um, and so this trapped energy is stress that's essentially trapped in my body, and my nervous system is pendulating in a bit of a survival mode. So that's what happens to me now, but I don't need to do any of the brain retraining. So I'm just saying this so that I
Yeah,
can go back because people might be
sure.
like, oh my God, I have to do this 100 times a day for the rest of my life. Like, no, this is not what the
Right.
retraining is. Yeah. And so just the awareness of me, oh, just take a deep breath. Oh, okay, that's what's happening. Okay, I didn't sleep well last night. I breastfed X many more times. I had that many calls. We're still a little bit jet lagged. This happened. My husband, whatever, da da da. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. That's what's happening. Okay, what do I need? And then I need some self-care. I need to go for a walk. I need to look outside. I need to take a warm bath, like just tending to my basic needs. So the great thing about when you change your brain chemistry is you don't have to go at it again from like, I need to change my brain and
Right.
heal. Like you have done so much healing, and now you can reap the benefits and simply tend to your needs and make sure that you're constantly, in alignment, doing things, at least one thing that you love in your day, so that you're bringing playfulness and joy. But going back to the brain retraining. So for anyone listening, a very beautiful sort of very active practical exercise is when you begin to sense the anxiety. For some of us, it's always underlying, always.
Mm.
And the way in which we know this is simply by taking the deepest breath. Like right now, Jackie, if you take the deepest breath you've taken all day.
Okay.
Have you taken the deepest breath you've taken all day?
Hmm.
At the end of the breath, there's a sense of relief.
Feels
Like,
good.
oh, I was unconsciously holding on in a couple of places, like, oh, my jaw's a little tight, my neck. And so there are some ways that you can tap into, is this always there? And then
Mhm.
because we think that all of a sudden we're in our living room doing nothing and we experience so much anxiety. But the reality is that it's always there, underlying in a very low tone, but it's
Mm.
this constant thought process, feeling process. Also, anxiety is very much of a feeling experience. We have racing thoughts and catastrophizing, but we're getting feelings from the body, right? And the mind is a meaning-making machine and is trying to make meaning of these feelings. And
Mhm.
so there's this unconscious process of the mind doing its racing sort of survival mode, typical pattern of anxiety, the body having unresolved issues. Usually, anxiety is all about something that you're feeling that is unresolved and that you're not aware of. So that might be you're afraid of something. The feeling of anxiety is fear, but the fear is just the protection that is on top of usually the fear of being hurt or your coping mechanism not working out, like the perfectionism or the people pleasing or high achieving or dissociation or the freeze or the shutdown. So when you have an experience of anxiety, the easiest way to interrupt it is from the second you wake up. Because even when we say, I was fine all morning and all of a sudden I became anxious, you're like, but something happened not just moments before, but there was an experience that your body and brain were having that led to this peak of fear, this peak of, oh, I need to protect myself now. There's a hypervigilance now.
Mm.
So the second you wake up, there's the intention to change your physiology to create a sense of safety. And the way that you do this, the whole process of neurolinguistic programming, brain retraining, the one that we teach that has polyvagal stuff, that has posture changes, it's a little complex to explain the full of it, but essentially you wake up when you begin this process. And You do a brief check-in, but without scanning your symptom. You're not scanning your body. You're checking in. What's happening for me right now? And then you learn. It takes a few days just to become aware of what's happening. The thing is, you can't interrupt a symptom until you know what's causing it. So when I was switching off the fever, I wasn't talking to my immune cells, and I wasn't like trying to regulate my body temperature. When I was switching off the fever, I was rewiring the stress, the fear, and the survival mode that was constantly being fueled by unconscious thinking and feeling patterns. And to become aware of I remember when I first became aware of the conversation I was having in my head, I was shocked. I couldn't
Yes.
believe it. So basically, you cannot begin to interrupt what you're not aware of. So the first few days is really about learning, what emotions am I feeling throughout the day? What thoughts am I having throughout the day? It's best to do it from the second you wake up. Like when you begin to become conscious of being awake, you will instantly find yourself being, I don't want to get up today. Oh my, today's too much. Oh my gosh, this starts it. There's just this pattern that we're so familiar with that overwhelms us completely. And it just, because we're so used to it, until it disrupts us, like palpitations or so much anxiety that it starts to impact like our vision, or we get this overwhelming fear. For those of us who are used to it, we sort of get on with our day and we just keep going and keep pushing. But so number one is awareness, becoming aware. What emotions am I feeling? What thoughts am I having that I'm not aware of, that I'm not aware? Some of us like mood swings, or "Oh, I'm just in a bad mood today."
Yeah.
You're not just in a bad mood. There's something someone said, an experience you had that triggered anger, hurt, a pattern that you often, and all of us have emotions that we go to. Some of us go to anger, some of us go to fear, some of us go to feeling sad or feeling shut down, dissociating. So all of these things impact our physiology, because we know that when our thoughts are negative and disruptive and unhelpful, when our emotions are like sadness and a constant like fear, anger, these experiences create stress. It's all about how our thinking and feeling is creating a stress loop that is literally impacting our physiology and taxing our nervous system. So our job is to become aware of the unconscious patterns that we're running on. And then after a few days of practicing this throughout your day, again, you start from the morning, because that's when you catch, if you get up and you've already said 15 times, oh my gosh, I can't do this. Like, I'm so tired.
How am I
It's
going to
just
get
too
through the
much.
day? Yeah.
Oh my God. That's it. Your patterns have started, and it's going to be harder to interrupt. So the first thing is to literally interrupt the pattern. So with our brain retraining, we interrupt through saying a word, and ours is space. And we also use a physical experience of creating space around us.
So you
And
take your
what
arms and you physically like create that space. Okay.
space, yeah.
Cool.
And what that does is it becomes an anchor for our brain to be like, oh, now everything sort of changes. Something has begun. There's a process, an exercise, something has changed, and now is the time. Now it's starting. So space, you take a moment to feel the space around you, to consciously create like a break, a pause in time, as if you had a remote control and you're like, pause, and just feeling into that space. Sometimes it's hard at the beginning, and a really good way to feel the space is to take a breath and then feel what's left at the end of your breath. Often what's left at the end of your breath is a little bit of emotion, information. It'll come to you. You'll know there's a little bit of information that is lingering. And when you say space, if you don't know what you're spacing, take a deep breath, and the answer is at the end of your breath,
It's
both
beautiful.
in both in feeling and in thinking. And then from here, we do some perceptual positioning. So we move around in space to get ourselves out of a pattern. And at the same time, we do polyvagal exercises. So when we're anxious, there's pent up energy in our body. When we say in our body, we mean in our muscles, in our joints, in our tendons, in the way in which our heart is beating, like literally in our body. Because sometimes I feel in this work, body is like the
Yeah.
body, the
Yep.
mind. But what is the body? There's
Right.
all these processes happening. It's real. It's not, because sometimes they're like, oh yeah, the body. I'm like, no, no, no. It's literally
Remember,
like
you have your body. You don't just have your mind. People really, it's like just take a few minutes and put your attention back on your body. It's your, yeah.
yeah. And so when you do, some of the polyvagal exercises, I can give you a couple right now, anyone who's listening. Um, with anxiety, you want to discharge. You want to access your sympathetic energy so that you can start to discharge it. So the best way to discharge sympathetic energy, which is the one that wants us to run, wants us to fight, wants us to hide, wants us to take action in a way that will
Hmm.
protect us, is to move our body. That's what our nervous system is begging us with anxiety.
Yep.
Please move your body. Please move. This is too much. Move your body. And it's interesting when you listen, although often with anxiety we freeze, if you just listen, what does my body want to do? It will want to shake. It will want
Yep.
to punch. It will want to,
Pace. Yep.
yeah. So a great set of practices is literally tapping, lightly
Mm.
slapping your arms, your chest, your whole body.
I see you do this on Instagram, and it was one of my questions. I'm like, what are you doing when you're tapping all of your body?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a just turned 12-year-old, and when he comes back and we have joint shared custody, so he spends half the time with his dad's, half the time with me, or even just when he comes back dysregulated from school, and he's like, I'm not quite sure what's wrong. He just wants to move his body. So I make sure like,
Yes.
let's go for a scooter ride, let's get up, let's do something without a story to it. I don't know if
Love
that,
that.
yeah, without, because sometimes we
Amazing.
just don't know. I loved the question and I did it while you were explaining it. And the answer did come to me at the end of the breath of what was in my space that I didn't know.
Mm.
Um, we had this young pilot, I'm Canadian originally, and we had this young pilot crash her airplane right near my son's school, and she died. She was the only pilot on it. And so I think like for the last few days, I'm present with it, processing it, doing all the things. And then when I took the end of the breath, that is what came to me. I'm like, oh, there's still more around that impact
Mhm.
because we have so many thoughts and feelings. I think the difference people, when they hear what you're teaching, why I think it's so important because it could feel overwhelming. It's like, oh, can I do all this? It's running your life anyway. Some people want to eat to not feel it. They take a drug to not feel it. They drink to not feel it. But the truth is if you don't feel it, it's just going to cause you more work later. So you might as well in the morning follow the practice that you're sharing because it
Yeah.
it saves us time, really. It looks like it sounds like it's a lot of work, but
It really isn't. All of this is the explanation. And it's interesting, like to if we were to say, let's learn how to ski,
yeah,
if I give you skis that you've never seen in your life, and I give you the coat and I give you the gloves, and you've never seen a coat and a gloves and skis or a mountain, and I'm like, hey, now go ski.
right.
You need some information. Like,
Yeah.
how do I put the skis on? Okay. How do I
Yeah.
put the jacket on? How do I put the gloves on? Oh,
Yeah.
it's cold. Okay. What's the snow? Oh, I have to ski. So there's this information that you need to learn. But once you know it, you put the gloves on, you put the jacket on, you put the skis on, and you ski down the mountain. So it's
Yes.
like becomes automatic. So just to lessen the overwhelm, it's like anything in life. The first time you do anything, it's a lot of information that when you read a book, there's so many words, so many letters, so many pages. When you finish the book, you're like, oh yeah, that book was about this guy who falls in love and then he
Right.
goes there and then it finishes.
Right.
Like,
What's your
oh,
one
so
takeaway? Right.
yeah. So the slapping, the tapping, shaking your body like you have water and you want to literally shake the water off your body. And then you want to start to use your voice. So the vagus nerve is this powerful nerve, which upon the polyvagal theory is based on, that is called vagus, means wandering in Latin. And it goes from your brain stem down into, it innervates a lot of areas, your all of your internal vital organs, but also your face, your ears, your voice box, the sides of your neck, and it innervates lots of areas that we have access to. So when we use our voice, like right now, but when we use it in a hum with
Um,
breath, or a voo or aum, or like all of the also Eastern kind of yoga, like that is so powerful. It's all vagus nerve work. They didn't know that 3,000 years ago,
Right.
but that's what's happening. So the vagus nerve is like the brake. And what it does is when you stimulate the vagus nerve, it activates this brake on your sympathetic nervous system, which is, and the vagus nerve hits the brake and your goes down.
Mm.
So it's the brake of a car that's going really fast. So when you stimulate your vagus nerve, your body's going, oh my God, oh, making this feel so nice. So when you
Yeah.
shake your body, you are telling your muscles that um, that there's a sense of safety. When you're, it's interesting, when you shake, when there's vibration, when there's tapping and slapping, your brain goes from whatever it's doing to interpreting the new information. So what you're
Wow.
asking, like, what is the slapping? Your brain is like, there's tingling, hand warm, skin, vibration. And you're like, oh, I'm not thinking about the thing anymore, or I'm not worried about. So you're in your body, you're
Wow.
embodying the sensation, the feeling, you're collecting that new information. Tapping,
Are
slapping,
you familiar with
voice.
EFT?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So something
yeah.
even similar.
Similar, yeah, but with your whole body and
Body.
using your breath and your voice. And some of we call them nervous system modifiers because they help modify the state of your nervous system. But anything with side eye movement, so you look to one side for 30 seconds, back to the middle, look to the other side, back to the middle, or stomping your feet on the ground. The bottom of our feet have millions of nerve endings. And when we trigger and stimulate those nerve endings, again, our brain is focused on, oh my gosh, so many nerve endings being stimulated. And it's focused on interpreting that information. So it's an interruption to a pattern. So what we're doing with space, creating space, we're interrupting a pattern. Then we're going into movement and discharge through the polyvagal exercises, through the vagus nerve stimulation. And then we want to create a sense of safety. Some other exercises that are still vagus nerve are the containment hug, where you put one hand, like left hand under right armpit, right hand over left shoulder, and then swaying from side to side. And it's about connecting. So you're feeling, rather than just hugging yourself, what is it like to feel like you're being hugged?
Mm.
Creating a sense of safety, settlement. And then one of the things that sort of tease up this change in your physiology is, what do I need right now? So I'm asking you, Jackie, right now, you felt that thing at the bottom of your breath. What do you need right now to make that feeling feel better, to create a shift in your physiology where at the bottom of your breath, what would you like at the bottom of your breath instead?
It's funny. I was really in the energy of thinking about my older son doing this with him. So I'm going back
Mm-hmm.
into breathing into that where that end is. And the first thing that came to me was just an expelling sadness or almost crying energy
Mm-hmm.
for the loss of her. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
I process it so quickly in my
Mhm.
mind of
Yes.
that was her path, that was her journey. She lived a really good life. I
Mm.
didn't pause enough to really feel the sadness
Mhm.
of,
Yeah.
wow, her loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
I
what
hear.
came second was go for a walk.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what is the emotion or the experience? What is the feeling that you want in your body? Like, how do you want to feel once you've processed that? You have that awareness, you want the release. Maybe it's also just the awareness of the release that will help in itself. You might
Mhm.
not even cry, but that, and then the walk. So um, what do you feel that you need, that your body needs in order to feel like you've arrived, in order to feel like you're settled?
What came to me when you were saying that is gratitude
Mm.
for life, of for
Mhm.
feeling that
Mhm.
gratitude for life, which is interesting because a bit of that was there when I was looking at her stuff
Mm.
of what a beautiful life. She had an adventurous life and
Mm.
beautiful photographer and all of these things. So it really came to being grateful for life is replacing
And
it.
and Jackie, how would your breath feel if you were grateful for life? You woke up
Oh,
feeling
that feels good.
grateful. Yeah. How would your thoughts be if you woke up feeling grateful? What would your thoughts be saying? You don't have to tell me, it's that
That's a great
awareness of
mindset
what,
shift.
yeah.
You know, in the beginning, it was I have lots of kids, sometimes four kids
Mm.
that live in our house on a school morning, and it's just, okay, we're going to get through this day. And when I shifted to the gratitude of getting to enjoy the morning and these kids and their laughter, I saw different pictures in my morning of, gratitude for this day and getting to have all these wild children.
I love that. And what
Yeah.
emotions would you feel if you were grateful all day? What emotions would you be flooded by?
It's funny. I know it's not an emotion, but the energy of it was like alive, joy,
Mhm.
excitement.
I love that. And what about the energy of your body, that alive joy? How does your body feel? Does anything change when you go through your day and that experience of gratitude?
I have a lot more trust. So bringing that joy and gratitude of just trusting the unfoldment of the day as opposed to really feeling in charge of the day, like did I did
Yeah.
I catch all the balls? Did I do all the things? And instead
Yes.
it goes to trust in the flow of the day.
So powerful. So, Jackie, why don't you take a deep breath again and just go to the end of the breath and tell me what your experience is now?
I see my son is in my space for some reason, my older one, as we're having this conversation. So at the end of that, I felt like a calmness and a sunlight around him.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
And what we are doing is creating an experience, paving a path. It's not your experience might have a big shift, but let's say we were doing this work and we were working on your anxiety. So at the bottom of your breath, there was fear, just fear that you didn't know. I don't know what I'm not afraid of anything. I'm in my living room, but I just feel
Mhm.
so when we're working with that, we still want to start with this top-down approach with the polyvagal stuff, with the perceptual positioning, with asking ourselves, how would we want to feel instead? What do you need now? What do you need right now if you wanted that experience to be different? So if you feel this feeling of anxiety, how would you want to feel instead of that? And for some people,
Mhm.
it's empowered or still or grounded or ease. It's rarely just calm when you really go into it, because a sense of calm sometimes can only be truly felt when you feel safe. And to get to calm and safe, we need other building blocks.
Mm.
But essentially, going back to the mountain, but a different analogy,
Mm.
when let's say you're at the top of a snowy mountain and there's one road down and it's icy and it's got like trees have fallen on the path and it's slippery and dangerous, but it's the only one. So every time you're at the top of the mountain, you're like, yikes, I guess this
Yeah.
is the way I'm going. Ooh, and you
Right.
get to the bottom. What we just did is you took a few steps in the snow. So the next time you're at the top, if you go soon enough, you'll still see the footsteps and you go, oh,
I remember
wait,
that.
that might look like a good path. I'm still not sure because like this one is a well-defined one and it's dangerous, but at least I know where I'm going. But if you leave too much time or you don't do it as, if you don't practice enough, that pathway goes away. It snows, it gets covered again, and you have to start over. So the practice over and over for someone who experiences anxiety, we do this 150 times a day. This is how I recovered from chronic fatigue syndrome, coupled with getting to the origin. So after I had more capacity, I could walk again. I started to add all the polyvagal work. So I didn't have to do the brain retraining. I would just do the discharge, the settling. Then I started to do the somatic experiencing work, learning about the messages of my body in form of emotion, in form of sensation, and just becoming so attuned to, all of the flavors and colors. When you first see a plate of pasta, you might go, oh, that's some pasta with red sauce. And then you go in deeper and you're like, oh, it's actually spaghetti with fresh baby tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. And sorry, that's an Italian expression that
Yeah,
we
that's
do.
good. Are you in
Cherry
Italy?
tomato. Yes, I'm in
Yeah.
Italy. Fresh cherry tomatoes and peppers and onions. And then you go in deeper and you're like, oh my gosh, there's also some Parmesan cheese. And that's what makes it so flavorful. So it's like you get to one layer because that's your capacity, that's your knowledge,
Yeah.
and then you expend more, then you expend more, and you get to the bottom of it. And then it's easy. It's like that, the coat, the gloves, you go skiing. You just need to build the blocks, have patience and trust, determination. And I will say, like, the compassionate approach is so important, but it's also a like, you've got this approach. Like, come
Yes.
on, again, I need to do this again because I still feel the anxiety. Like I
Yep.
would hype myself up and I was like, like, come on, no, it's still there. Come on.
Yep.
And then how would I feel? And then the goal is when you go into, your breath, your thoughts, your feelings, how would it feel if if they were filled with an experience of feeling empowered? What does that look like? How does my life, what are the colors? So we go into that a little bit more. I gave you a bit of a shortcut
Yeah.
version, but that's the embodiment. I'm not asking you to be to feel empowered. I'm guiding you to feel empowered. So, and you do this on yourself, by the way. So we teach
Yep.
you how to do it on yourself. So it's a self practice, and that's it. You've created the new path, and then you literally start to not experience the thing, which can be from back pain to anxiety to chronic fatigue syndrome and all of the host of symptoms. And it's just this powerful experience of creating a different experience in your body
Yeah.
and for your brain to memorize it. Yeah.
And it seems to me that it's different pathways, all the same doorway, all the same destination of you still uncovered what the message of the person's pain is, whatever it's, I'm reminded of this one person that had headaches every single day, and working with her, she didn't realize those thoughts of she beat herself up for forgetting her mask. She beat herself up. She's like, I'm just not going to do that anymore. And that was the first day she didn't have a headache. So it's
Mm.
almost like this tapping into your system to find out, like, I didn't know I felt my son in my space until we just did that of, wow, there's a
Mm.
protection unconsciously that I still have with him that's present that I wasn't conscious to. And now it's more trust and unfoldment. I do have one small question, then we can get
Yeah.
into, do you teach this in Heal? But
Yes.
the question before it is for someone listening that, and I remember I watched something of yours in a grocery store. You're like, I just did it in the middle of the grocery store at first. If someone's listening and they're in a meeting,
Mhm.
kids are at school, something where you can't, I mean, I'm so out there that I probably would tap myself in the middle of
Yeah.
of a meeting
Yeah.
or airplane ride turbulence, something. What is there something they can do temporary to,
Mhm.
if they have back pain or anxiety or whatever the message, the symptom is, can they do something
Yes. So
abbreviated?
there's always techniques around. So the best way, and I'm going to say it like there's no shortcuts.
Yeah.
Like you can do things like you can use a vagus nerve that's a little bit less obvious, like just tapping on your chest.
Yep.
That gives a predictability, a rhythm where your nervous system is like, oh, it's nice. Like I know what's about to happen. I'm
Yeah.
literally just gonna feel this feeling. But when you just do that or you just do other things without having done the whole thing,
Yeah.
your brain starts to compensate. So
Okay.
you need to find moments because when you learn it, it just takes like 3 minutes. It's just a process, but you need to do it fully the first few times. First thing in the morning, it's also a great exercise to learn to set boundaries and carve space for yourself. Even with
Yeah.
young children, we have so many single parents with 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, and they're like afraid to ask for help. And they're like, actually, I called my friend over and she was with my kids for half an hour and I did the training
Yeah.
7 times and my
Yep.
symptoms got better. And that in itself is such a huge win. Asking for help, setting a
Yes.
boundary, or literally, if you are at work all day, having healing bathroom breaks.
Breaks.
So,
I tell people go to the bathroom. Everybody has 2 minutes to go to the bathroom. No one's going to deny you to go to the bathroom and
exactly.
put your hands on your body. Right. Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. So finding those things, creating the boundaries. And I just want to give that message of like, I think in this fast-paced life, we always want like a quick fix because we have no time. And I think you'll know as well as I do that it's usually only until you're bedbound that you actually carve out time. Like I was having symptoms for years and I was like, meh, meh, until I was forced to stop. And then I was like, okay, fine. Okay, fine.
Yes.
I'll stop working. I'll do this. Like I
Yep.
can't do anything else now. Like I have to, everything stops. Like it for the universe literally is like, you're not doing it, your body, I'm gonna do it for you.
The
There's like
Mack, the
this,
Mack truck that hits you. Tony Robbins
yes.
has a fun analogy that I've taken with me is the feather bricker truck. It's life will give you
Mhm.
those whispers, you ignore it, then the brick happens. And then if you're not listening, that Mack truck comes and levels you out. So you might as well listen for the feather or you're going to be laid out.
I love that. And in
Yeah.
our book, I think we say, yeah, in our book, one of the we have like these messages highlighted
Oh yeah.
in like a bold so that you can, just memorable experiences of the brain and the body. And one of them is if you don't listen to your body whispering, you're gonna hear it
Scream.
scream.
I love that.
And yeah, I mean I love the feather and the brick and the truck. That's so accurate.
Because sometimes I'm like, oh, I got the whisper and it's not now. It's like, okay, I'll deal with that later. And then the situation comes back and I'm like, you better stop because you don't want the truck. So let's clear the
So
power space. And
so
so you don't have
true.
to clear a week. So,
So
and
true.
I also invite people with kids too. Um, I do lots of stuff with my kids and they watch.
Yeah.
They're watching things. Mommy, what are you doing right now? Mommy's going for a walk because I really feel like that was a
Mhm.
lot with the bus driver. Let's all go walk it out. And
Love
they
that.
watch and they tune in. I have a picture of my partner's daughter sitting on the sidewalk and she has her hands on her chest. And I asked, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just checking in. I was like, oh, great. It's like parent win. I took a photo and shared it with my community of kids are watching. They're really watching what do you, because we don't want to show them mommy doesn't have stress. Mommy's just
Mm,
superpower of
totally.
handling these four children and all the things and all the bills and all the everything. And because then it's unrealistic and they think, well, how come I can't do that? And it's like, no, it's crazy. And we're okay. And we're just
Totally.
going to tap. I'm going to teach them to tap, especially my older guy,
Yeah.
to tap
Tapping
your
is,
body. Yeah.
yes, amazing, amazing. And when you learn that there's all these different ways to help yourself, um, and that, there's smaller things that you can do throughout your day, and then there's the long-term deeper work
Yeah.
that if you want long-term results,
Right.
it really is like it's a very physiological experience, and our physiology just needs that input because of how the brain works, of how it is insistent on the patterns that it uses most often. So if
Yeah.
you create new one, if you were now to everyday practice the gratitude feeling, gratitude,
Mm.
your brain would be like, I'm grateful, I'm great. And
Yeah.
all the things that
So
come
good.
with it. Yeah.
What a
Yay.
different life. I would love to share with people you have an upcoming book um that's
Yes.
coming out and then also your heal program. I know they could be a little bit different if you want to share. Is this what you
Yeah.
teach everything today in heal?
So the HEAL program is a 10 module course, and what I taught today is the first two modules.
Okay.
And then we dive into the whole polyvagal work of safety. We dive into true self work, inner child work, somatic experiencing work. We dive into future sort of future selfing, we call it, where your brain is really we do the past work, we do the present and the future to increase that capacity for the experience of emotion and feeling, and then we wrap it all together in this comprehensive, like, this is your toolbox. You've been practicing the brain retraining, you've been practicing so you're ready to go out in the world, and these tools have helped people fully recover from lupus, from rheumatoid arthritis, from pain, from fibromyalgia, from 15 plus years of chronic illness, from multiple chronic illnesses, FND, CFS, POTS, heart conditions that are rooted in nervous system dysregulation, like unexplained
Right.
arrhythmias or ectopic beats. So, all the stuff that's under that big umbrella of what we define as a nervous system that's on overload and needs help to be able to direct the harmony of the body again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet someone and I work with probably hundreds of people a month that doesn't have some kind of dysregulation or stress. And
Yeah.
or if they're just shut off. Some people numb it and they're not aware of it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not
Yes.
there. But
Yeah.
if you have a
Yeah.
nervous system, it gets overloaded.
Totally. And Carden, who's my business partner, he and I created this together. So we merge our
Yes.
specialities and we built this thing. There's a big community. You have mentors, you have this healing collective, and you get it forever and it's lifetime access. And I'd love to offer anyone who's listening a 40% discount on
Wow,
our
yeah.
program. Yeah, I
So
think
great.
that's,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
And then I'll put the link and then the code of that discount in the notes below.
Amazing. And then our book is called The Secret Language of the Body, Regulate Your Nervous System, Heal Your Body, Free Your Mind. And it's a practical book with exercises, illustrated exercises. It uses the AIR approach, awareness, interruption, and redesign, which I described to you
Yes.
in a very detailed way without nominating those specifically. But if you go into the book, awareness, interruption, and redesign of the mind, the body, and of your human. And your human is the origin of all those patterns, you know,
So
the
good.
attachment and polyvagal and all of that. And that's it. And
I
it's
could
coming
live in
out.
this world. I love it. I love it.
Yay!
It's so good to me anyway. The people
Amazing.
are like, do you do this for work? It's
Mhm.
also fun. I think the body is
Yeah,
is super fun, and
I
thank you so
agree.
much for everything that you shared and everything that you do
Thank
and for
you.
going through your journey so you can help all of us.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing about your journey as well. And that was so beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you.